children, Jaden, and her was mounting. Moreover, Amira was terrified that she, Jaden, or the children might contract COVID-19, particularly given that they were black and COVID-19 mortality rates in the United States were significantly higher among black people than among white people, ASHETAL, 2021. Then, a month later, the unthinkable happened. Jaden, always so strong and energetic, came down with COVID-19. First he had a harmless cough, then a rising temperature, and eventually trouble breathing. In critical condition, he landed in an overcrowded and understaffed hospital fighting the virus without Amira and the daughters he adored. Amira was devastated. She felt overwhelmed and horribly alone, unable to make everything work. Increasingly, she wondered whether her family would survive this ordeal intact. Image with the following description: a portrait shows a young tribal woman from the PardonMyBeautii tribe in Myanmar. She wears a colorful floral headdress and a tall, heavy stack of brass rings around her neck. Different but not psychopathology. This woman, like others from the PardonMyBeautii tribe in Myanmar, Burma, is preoccupied with the length of her neck and wears heavy stacks of brass rings to try to extend it, seeking to achieve what her culture teaches her is the perfect neck size. In Western society, the same behavior and goals would break behavioral norms and might well be considered pathological. In this light, Amira's emotions and thoughts do not seem as strange. One clearly disturbed thing here was her situation of pandemic, social isolation, extended unemployment, severe family illness, and more. Many human experiences produce intense reactions: financial ruin, large-scale catastrophes, disasters, rape, child abuse, war, terminal illness, chronic pain, LEETAL, 2021, Monroe and Slack, 2020. Is there an appropriate way to react to such things? Should we ever call reactions to such experiences pathological? Distress. A person's behavior or emotions may be assessed as deviant, even after their difficult situation is taken into consideration, but that alone does not mean their experiences are necessarily pathological. According to many clinical theorists, behavior, ideas, or emotions typically must cause distress before they can be regarded as signs of psychopathology. Consider the icebreakers, a group of people in Michigan who go swimming in lakes throughout the state every weekend from November through February. The colder the weather, the better they like it. One man, a member of the group for 17 years, says he loves the challenge. Welcome in everybody. A 37-year-old lawyer believes that the weekly shock is good for her health. It cleanses me, she says. It perks me up and gives me strength. Certainly these people are different from most of us, but should their behavior be considered pathological? Far from experiencing distress from the cold, they feel energized and challenged. Their positive feelings must cause us to hesitate before we decide that they are functioning in a manner that reflects psychopathology. Make sure you guys subscribe and like the live. I'm reading can be considered to reflect psychopathology. A chapter for my psychology class. Maintain a positive frame of mind. Consider once again Finn, the young man who hears mysterious voices. What if he enjoyed listening to the voices, felt honored to be chosen, loved sending out warnings on the internet, and looked forward to saving the world? Despite such upbeat feelings, his functioning might still be viewed as pathological. Dysfunction. Psychopathology tends to be dysfunctional, that is, it interferes with daily functioning. It so upsets, distracts, or confuses people that they cannot care for themselves properly, participate in ordinary social interactions, or work productively. Finn, for example, quit his job, left his partner, parents, and friends, and prepared to withdraw from the productive life he once led. Because our society holds that it is important to carry out daily activities in an effective manner, Finn's behavior is likely to be regarded as dysfunctional and undesirable and, in turn, an indication of psychopathology. In contrast, the behavior of the icebreakers, who continue to perform well in their jobs and enjoy fulfilling relationships, would probably be considered simply unusual. Image with the following description: a photo shows a dark-haired man and a young blonde woman dressed as Supergirl and Superman at a Comic-Con, New York City. The man points his fist toward the sky as he imitates Superman. Context is key. A couple dressed as Supergirl and Superman stop and point upward as they cross a street in New York City. Their appearance and behavior might suggest psychological dysfunction were it not for the fact that they are attendees at a recent Comic-Con, one of the many popular conventions held across the country to showcase pop culture entertainment. Danger. Perhaps the ultimate psychological dysfunction is behavior that becomes dangerous to oneself or others. Individuals whose behavior is consistently careless, hostile, desperate, or confused may be placing themselves or those around them at risk. Finn, for example, seemed to be endangering both himself, with his diet, and others, with his building of blade weapons. Although danger is often cited as a feature of psychopathology, research suggests that it is actually the exception rather than the rule. Battaglia, Blamack, and Goldberg, 2022, Gissi, Hazard, and Singh, 2020. Most people experiencing overwhelming anxiety, depression, and even bizarre thinking
Hello, welcome in.
danger to themselves or to anyone else. Whiting, Lichtenstein, and Faisal, 2021. Moreover, in the absence of distress and dysfunction, dangerous behaviors alone do not signify psychopathology. Individuals working in professions characterized by everyday risk of injury or even death, such as firefighters or other emergency responders, typically choose these professions for altruistic reasons and out of a sense of duty. Although their particular call to service may place them in routine danger, they typically enjoy a sense of honor, positive mental well-being, and satisfying family lives. The roles of society and culture. An essential question has been implied throughout our discussion of the defining features of psychopathology, namely, how to judge whether a given behavior is, in fact, too deviant, distressing, dysfunctional, and or dangerous. As you will read later in this chapter, specific assessments of psychopathology are made by clinical practitioners. But their determinations are ultimately influenced by two broad factors: societal norms and cultural differences. Societal norms. Each society establishes its own set of norms, stated and unstated rules for proper conduct. Behavior that breaks legal norms is considered to be criminal. Behavior, thoughts, and emotions that break norms of psychological functioning may be labeled pathological. Norms. A society's stated and unstated rules for proper conduct. Judgments about what constitutes psychopathology vary from society to society. A society's norms grow from its particular culture, its history, values, institutions.
Please like the
ethics,
live,
skills,
subscribe to the
technology, and
channel.
arts. A society that values competition and assertiveness may accept aggressive behavior, whereas one that emphasizes cooperation and gentleness may consider aggressive behavior unacceptable and even pathological. A society's values may also
Thank you for the
change
hearts.
over time, causing its views of what is psychopathology to change as well. In Western society, for example, for a woman to seek the power of running a major corporation or leading a country would have been considered inappropriate and even delusional 100 years ago. Today the same behavior is valued. Culture. A people's common history, values, institutions, habits, skills, technology, and arts. Image with the following description: a photo shows two smiling women. The woman on the right is heavily tattooed on her neck and arms. She has both arms extended with her hands resting on the neck and shoulders of the other woman. Changing times for ink. Here a woman congratulates her best friend as she gets ready for her wedding. Just decades ago, the elaborate body art on her arms and neck would have been considered outrageous and strange, perhaps even pathological. Today, however, tattoos, even extensive ones, are relatively common. As many as 40% of adults in the United States have at least one tattoo. 25% have multiple tattoos. Thus, ultimately, a society selects general standards for defining psychopathology and then clinical practitioners apply those standards to particular cases. One theorist, Thomas Zask, 1920 to 2012, placed such emphasis on society's role in shaping what is considered normal that he found the whole concept of mental illness to be invalid, a myth of sorts. Zask, 2011, 1963, 1960. According to Zask, the deviations that society calls psychopathology are simply problems in living, not signs of something wrong within the person. As you will learn in the chapter on models of psychopathology, a number of today's clinical theorists similarly emphasize the role of illness or disorder when seeking to understand psychopathology, and instead look at broader societal factors. It is worth noting that the powerful impact of societal norms can sometimes lead clinicians and the public to inadvertently minimize or overlook significant psychological problems. If a behavior excessive use of alcohol among college students, say, is familiar enough, the society may fail to recognize that it is deviant, distressful, dysfunctional, and dangerous. Thousands of college students throughout the United States are so dependent on alcohol that it interferes with their personal and academic lives, causes them great discomfort, jeopardizes their health, and often endangers them and the people around them. NIAAA, 2022. Yet their problem often goes unnoticed and undiagnosed. Alcohol is so much a part of the college subculture that it is easy to overlook drinking behavior that has become pathological. Critical thought: what behaviors fit the criteria of deviant, distressful, dysfunctional, or dangerous but would not be considered by most people to reflect psychopathology. In a related vein, overattention to a society's norms may lead clinicians and the public to confuse eccentricities, unusual patterns with which others have no right to interfere with, mental disturbances, patterns that may require intervention. From time to time, we see or hear about people who behave in ways we consider strange, such as an individual who lives alone with dozens of cats and rarely talks to other people. The behavior of such people may not fit a society's behavioral norms, and it may well be dysfunctional, yet many professionals think of it as eccentric rather than reflecting psychopathology. See
Hola.
Psychwatch. Marching to a different drummer, eccentrics. Writer James Joyce always carried a tiny pair of ladies' bloomers, which he waved in the air to show approval. Benjamin Franklin took air baths for his health, sitting naked in front of an open window. To save money, financier Hetty Green, arguably the richest woman in America during the late 1800s, wore the same dress each day and never changed her underwear until they wore out. Alexander Graham Bell covered the windows of his house to keep out the rays of the full moon. He also tried to teach his dog how to talk.
Hello, welcome in everybody.
Winchester spent much of her great fortune on decades of uninterrupted, around-the-clock reconstruction of her home. She believed continuous modifications, including several staircases to nowhere, were needed to ward off evil spirits. Writer D.H. Lawrence enjoyed removing his clothes and climbing mulberry trees. As long as she kept winning, tennis legend Serena Williams would always wear the same pair of unwashed socks throughout each tournament. Model and television personality Heidi Klum carries around a bag of her baby teeth most of the time. Facebook co-founder Mark Zuckerberg's closet is full of multiple versions of the exact same outfit, a gray t-shirt.
Thank you for coming back.
He claims that wearing the same outfit,
I'm finishing up this book sleeve.
deciding each morning what to wear, helps conserve his energy.
I should have brought my book in here so I could see if it's big enough.
Throughout the day. These famous persons have been called eccentrics. The dictionary defines an eccentric as a person who deviates from common behavior patterns or displays odd or whimsical behavior. But how can we separate a psychologically healthy person who has unusual habits from a person whose oddness is a symptom of psychopathology? Little research has been done on eccentrics, but a few pieces of work offer some insights. Cayley, 2021, Gencarella, 2018, Sinclair, 2017, Newman, 2013, Weeks and James, 1995. For example, researcher David Weeks, 2015, studied 1,000 eccentrics and estimated that as many as 1 in every 5,000 persons may be a classic, full-time eccentric. Weeks pinpointed 15 characteristics common to the eccentrics in his study: nonconformity, creativity, strong curiosity, idealism, extreme interests and hobbies, lifelong awareness of being different, high intelligence, outspokenness, non-competitiveness, unusual eating and living habits, disinterest in others' opinions or company, mischievous sense of humor, non-marriage, eldest or only child, and poor spelling skills. Weeks suggests that eccentrics do not typically manifest psychopathology. Whereas the unusual behavior of persons with mental disorders is thrust upon them and usually causes them considerable upset, eccentricity is chosen freely and provides pleasure. In short, eccentrics know they're different and glory in it. Weeks and James, 1995, p. 14. Similarly, the thought processes of eccentrics are not severely disrupted and do not leave these persons dysfunctional. In fact, Weeks found that eccentrics in his study actually had fewer emotional problems than individuals in the general population. Perhaps being an original is good for mental health. Image with the following description: a photo shows Tran Van Hay, holding his incredibly long hair wrapped around his shoulders. Eccentric, but not pathological. Tran Van Hay holds his hair more than 20 feet in length around his body, as if it were a cobra. By the time of his death in 2010, he had not had a haircut for 50 years. The married Vietnamese man otherwise lived and worked as a highly respected and productive herbalist. He just liked his hair on the long side longer than any other person on earth. Cultural differences, the importance of cultural humility. Discussions sometimes make it sound like a society is composed of a homogeneous population living in a single geographical area, with a fully shared history and set of
Hey,
values.
welcome in.
But, in fact, a society consists of multiple subsocieties, each of which may have somewhat different norms, histories, and values than the society at large. In turn, the norms of psychological functioning and behavior can vary within a given society, particularly in societies characterized by people of varying races, ethnicities, nationalities, and languages. Thus, when determining whether a person is displaying psychopathology, it is important that clinicians, and the public in general, look at the behavior in question through the lens of the individual's cultural norms and values, not exclusively through that of the clinician's own culture, personal outlook, or notions of appropriate functioning. More generally, in their clinical work and research investigations, clinical practitioners and scientists must adopt a stance of cultural humility, a process of ongoing discovery and self-reflection in which professionals continuously examine their own beliefs and cultural identities, explore client cultures and historical realities that differ from their own, seek to understand the cultural context of each person's mental health challenges, and respond accordingly. Louis, 2022, Akeril, McCall, and Aragam, 2021, Tervalin and Murray Garcia, 1998. When scientists and practitioners do not conduct their work in this way, they run a serious risk of mislabeling culturally appropriate behavior as pathological. Cultural humility. A process in which clinical scientists or practitioners continuously examine their own beliefs and cultural identities, explore individuals' cultures and historical realities that differ from their own, seek to understand the cultural context of each person's mental health challenges, and respond accordingly. The call for cultural humility by clinicians and researchers has grown stronger over the past decade, as the clinical field has come to recognize the enormous impact of cultural influences in the determination, understanding, and treatment of mental health matters. You will see this growing recognition in our many discussions of multicultural issues and influences throughout the textbook. What is treatment? Once clinicians decide that a person is indeed displaying some form of psychopathology, they seek to treat it. Treatment, or therapy, is a procedure designed to change pathological behavior into less disturbed, more functional behavior. It, too, requires careful definition. For clinical scientists, the problem is closely related to defining psychopathology. Consider the case of Bodhi. Treatment. A systematic procedure designed to change dysfunctional behavior into more functional behavior, also called therapy. February. He cannot leave his apartment. Bodhi knows this for a fact. The apartment is the only place where he feels safe from humiliation, danger, even ruin. If he were to go to work, his co-workers would certainly find him lacking. A pointed remark, a quizzical look, that's all it would take for Bodhi to get the message. Bodhi's state of mind has changed so much in recent months. 3 months ago,
Alright, I think this is
he
enough.
started a new job, an incredible opportunity as an associate city planner. But in quick order, everything went to pot. For this new job, he had to move away from his beloved San Francisco, where he had many friends and where there was a large population of people who, like him, grew up in India and shared many of the same customs and traditions. Bodhi now found himself with no friends, plagued with self-doubt, with work projects that he felt were above his head, and consumed with unrelenting feelings of anxiety and depression. Thus, a week ago he asked for a leave of absence from his job. Since then, he has been at home, unable to push himself out of the apartment or even to get out of bed. He believes that if he were to go out shopping, everyone would wind up staring at him before long. Surely other people would see his dark mood and thoughts. He wouldn't be able to hide them. He does, bringing him to his knees and leaving him breathless and unable to get home. No, he's better off staying in his room, trying to get through another painful evening.
The
Thank
book.
goodness for
Oh,
social media.
can you go give me another one of these? And then
Great, he knows. Be cut off from
the
the world
book
altogether.
that's on top of my crochet
September.
shelf thingy.
Bodhi's social
Can you
life
bring that?
revolves around a growing number of friends, including Joseph and Michaela, colleagues from the city planning office, and Cruz and Tim, whom he met at a watercolor painting class, of all places. Yes, he, Bodhi, actually joined a painting class not far from his apartment. Beyond the painting class and other organized activities, he frequently goes out with his friends for dinner, drinks, or a get-together at someone's house to chat about life, their jobs, current events, or whatever. Particularly special in Bodhi's life is Priya, whom he met at an Indian cooking class he discovered a couple of towns over. They go to clubs,
The house,
sporting
the code.
events, and concerts together.
I'm sure it has
They
to
also run
charge.
together a lot and enjoy exploring restaurants in the area.
I never charged
They
it.
even found an authentic Indian restaurant less than 30 minutes away that reminded Bodhi of his grandmother's delicious cooking. Priya thinks Bodhi is just terrific, and Bodhi finds himself beaming whenever she's around. As far as work goes, Bodhi actually looks forward every day to the demands and surprises of his job and to his dealings with colleagues, associates, and community and political leaders. He is now a happy, active, and socially engaged person, enjoying both the pleasures and challenges that life offers. Of note, their words. I became insane, with long intervals of horrible sanity. Edgar Allan Poe. In February, Bodhi's thoughts, feelings, and behavior interfered with all aspects of his life. Yet by September most of his symptoms had disappeared. All sorts of factors may have contributed to Bodhi's improvement: conversations with family members, advice from a lifelong friend, fun adventures with new friends, visits back to his old city, a relaxing vacation, fortuitous events, or perhaps a big change in his diet. Any or all of these things may have been useful to Bodhi, but they could not be considered treatment or therapy. Those terms are usually reserved for special, systematic procedures for helping people overcome their psychological difficulties. According to pioneering clinical theorist Jerome Frank, all forms of therapy have 3 essential features. A sufferer who seeks relief from the healer. A trained, socially accepted healer, whose expertise is accepted by the sufferer and the sufferer's social group. A series of contacts between the healer and the sufferer, through which the healer, tries to produce certain changes in the sufferer's emotional state, attitudes, and behavior. Frank, 1973, pages 2 to 3. Image with the following description, a photo shows